Hi everybody, I hope you are doing well. Today I'm going to show you how you can set up your DHCP server and your DNS server and your, your web server using Ubuntu on your workstation, on your VMware workstation. I will explain as well what is the DNS server and what is its utilities, and the same thing with DNS server and the web server as well. In this lab, we will use abdelali.com as our domain for our DNS server, and as IP address, as a private IP address, we will use 172.24.31.0, and with mask address of 255.255.255.0. So let me go to my VMware workstation and show you how these things are working. So first thing, I have started my DHCP server and my DNS server, and this is my client to test if everything is working well. I have already in my previous video show you how you can install Ubuntu on your VMware workstation. I will leave the link in the description, or you can find it in the right top corner. You just click on that link and you will go and see how we can install Ubuntu on VMware workstation. So first thing I will do is I will log in to my DHCP server, then to my DNS server, then to my client host. Simulator. So before we start to dive into this lab, let me explain you a little bit and illustrate what is the DHCP server and what is DNS server. So I will go here to my Figma design, where I have implement all the things that going under the hood when we are creating a DHCP server. We assume that you have a laptop, and for example you have your router in your home, because in the router there is a DHCP server, and your host want to have an IP address, right? Once the client will connect to the router, it will ask him, is there any DHCP server here? I want to have an IP address. So this client will send a broadcast. A broadcast means it will send a request to all the computers that are in the same network with him. For example, in your LAN, in your local area network, it will send a broadcast to all the computers that are in your private network, asking them, is there any DHCP server here? Then once that request arrives to the DHCP server, the DHCP server will say to the client, here I am a DHCP server. I will give you this IP address. I will give you an IP address. For example, 172.24.31.5, for example. Then the client will say to the DHCP server, okay, give me that IP address, please. Then the DHCP server will give him that IP address, and once it will assign that client that IP address. That IP address will be occupied, and in the next time when another client will connect to the DHCP, it will not give him the same IP address, right? Unless if this client does not send the DHCP server a list renewable, right? A renewal list, and I will show you what means the list IP address in the few seconds later. So now the our our client has his own IP address, right? And now and the DHCP server does not only delegate an IP address, but it's delegate also the IP address of the gateway and the IP address of our DNS servers. Let me show you here what means the less IP address. For example, we assume that we have a DHCP server and we give him a range, because when you set at the first time your DHCP server, you create a range. For this range, tell to the DHCP server any client that want to connect to you, give him an IP address between this range, right? In this simple example, we have only 3 IP address in our pool or in our range. The first one has 1, the second has 2, and the third has 3, right? Now every time, every hour, or for example every 2 days, this client or this PC will send the DHCP server, right? Will send it a request telling him, please renewal my list IP address. Once this client sends the DHCP server that message, is try to inform the DHCP server, look, I still use this IP address, please don't give him to anyone. If someone else joined to you, don't give him this IP address because I still use it. And the same thing here, right? This client, if he is still connected to the DHCP server after 2 days, it will send a message to the DHCP server informing him that he still uses that IP address. And we assume that this user is disconnected from the DHCP server, right? And another for example, another client joined to the DHCP server. This client will be not able to have an IP address because we have only 3 IP address in our range, and this IP address is still occupied by the user, right? But if after 2 days, it depends on the time that we have specified for the list time. If, for example, if we have after 2 days, this user didn't send a message to the DHCP server informing him that he's still using this IP address, then what the DHCP server will do is will delete this user, right? And then will assign that IP address to the new user. Right? But what if, for example, if we want that this user or this client